Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today we are going to talk about brakes. The majority of consumer-based vehicles kicking around out there today are hydraulic power assist brakes, so that's what we will talk about today. We will start with the brake pedal and work our way out to the tires.
This is confusing!
Everybody listening to this video that also has a car knows what a brake pedal is, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but it is a pedal utilizing a system of levers that pushes into a rod into the back of the brake booster. The brake booster is important, so we are going to spend a little bit of time on this. We should start by saying, without a brake booster, trying to activate your brake system would be really difficult, no matter how strong your legs are. You would have to try very hard to stop your car.
Stop the car! Stop the fucking car!
Your brake booster makes this very easy for you. How this works is there are two hemispheres inside a brake booster. One hemisphere houses vacuum created by the engine while it's running. The other uses just the atmospheric pressure for the place you're at. When you push in on your brake pedal, the strength of your push is magnified by the amount of pressure pushing against the plate against the negative pressure in the other hemisphere. That's why stopping is so much easier than it would be without one. Moving on, we have the master cylinder, which is bolted right to the brake booster. The master cylinder has an input on the back where an actuator rod hits it from the brake booster. For fluid outputs, it's got 4 or 3 lines, 2 that go to the front and 1 or 2 that go to the rear tires. The master cylinder also houses the fluid reservoir, which is also very important. The fluid reservoir gives the brake system a fluid replacement for hard parts that wear out over time. Assuming your last brake job was done correctly, you can check the level of your brake pads just by looking at your fluid reservoir. If the fluid is really low, you'll know either your brakes are wore out or you've got a leak. The next piece of this puzzle we'll talk about are brake calipers. We're going to skip hoses and all of that jazz. Brake calipers have a piston inside, and when you push your foot on the brake and all the other cool things happen, that fluid pushes that piston into the inboard brake pad. When that happens, it puts pressure on the outboard brake pad to hit the rotor as well, and this is what causes you to stop. Technically, friction is what causes you to stop. Anyways, as you can imagine, friction produces heat, and heat is bad. Heat can warp rotors. So vehicle manufacturers have to engineer special ways that air can pass through the brake system to keep them cool. You'll even see some vehicles come with slotted or drilled rotors to help dissipate the heat better. Some older vehicles will have rear brake drums instead of pads, rotors, and calipers, and very old cars will have four-wheel brake drums. I should note that I hate drum brakes, but I will still talk about them. They function very much the same as pads, rotors, and calipers, but a completely different setup. Instead of rotors, there is a round donut-shaped drum, and there's shoes that hit the inside run of that. And instead of calipers, there are wheel cylinders, which have a piston on the left and right side of them, which push the shoes against the drum. They are not nearly as efficient as pad, rotors, and calipers, and they don't work very well either. And I will leave it at that. Most vehicles today have anti-lock brakes. All this means is that there is a device in place that under harsh braking conditions does not allow the wheels to lock. Locking up all of your wheels and sliding out of control is not very safe. Anti-lock brakes regulate the pressure going to each wheel, allowing them to have short bursts of braking without actually locking up. The last thing we'll talk about are some braking symptoms and what some symptoms could mean. If you feel a pulsation in the steering wheel while you're braking, this generally means your front rotors are warped. They get warped because either they've been turned too thin and warp easily, or they've gotten excessively hot. Generally, if your rear rotors are warped, you'll feel the vibration more in the floor than you will in the steering wheel. Let's say you slam on your brakes and your car pulls one direction or the other. This generally means you've got one normally functioning caliper and the opposite caliper is hanging up or frozen in place because it's old, you're lazy, and don't fix your brakes right.
I will find you.
The solution to this is just replacing everything, simply because you have to assume the calipers have been on the same duration of time, and so have the rotors and pads. And if you're going to take half a side apart and do all of that, and not the other, then you'll have one brand new side and one used side, and then you'll pull the other direction. So the general consensus is, unless you're really trying to pinch some pennies, just replace everything at once and get it out of the way. Let's say you slam on the brakes and the pedal goes to the floor with next to zero resistance whatsoever. This is bad. This means you've either blown a brake line and you're pushing fluid out of it, or you have a bad master cylinder.
True.
And what about if you slam on your brakes but your brake pedal doesn't move? It's hard as a rock and you have no stopping power. This generally means your brake booster is faulty or the vacuum to it has become disconnected. Or your engine is incapable of producing vacuum because it's garbage and you need a new car. Disclaimer. When I talk about symptoms and probable causes, they are just that. Everything has exceptions, and there are exceptions to the braking systems of all cars. This is not an instruction video or a tutorial on how to fix brakes. This is more of a breakdown on brake parts and what they do. If you've made it this far, thank you so much for watching. If you've watched my other videos and subscribed to the channel, thank you also very much, and I'll see you next time. Take care.